Welcome to the Conversio channel. My name is Mr. Lee Matthew Jackson, and today we have the one, the only. It's Mr. Pete Everett from SEO Hive fame. Pete, buddy, how are you today?
Hi mate, good to be here. I don't know whether to burst into Chesney Hawks after that intro. The one and only.
Given that many of the audience will be American, I'm not sure they'll get that anyway. So there'll be an
I won't bother.
There'll be an awful lot of Googling after this episode, I am sure. So, Pete, for the folks that do not know you, please, can you give us a little bit of background about your fine self? Something perhaps that people don't know about you as well would be epic.
Ooh, you want to go juicy this early in the show, Lee? Really? Okay. So, my name is Pete, as Lee just said. I've been personal friends with Mr. Lee Matthew Jackson for... it must be 7 or 8 years since we actually first met in person. So longer than that since we've been chatting online, which is insane to think about what's happened in the world in that length of time. I am an agency owner here in the UK. I learnt my craft, if you like, working in creative and e-commerce agencies in the Midlands, part of the UK. And 8 years ago, set up my own agency, and 3 and a bit years ago set up SEO Hive, which is a white label provider of SEO services to digital agencies to help them build monthly recurring revenue into their businesses. Something people may not know about me is I did 2 laps of Niagara Falls in the cockpit of a passenger plane before 9/11 and when kids were allowed to go on the cockpits of airplanes during flights. And I got to sit there in the jump seat while we got put in a stack and did 2 laps with a 180-degree view of Niagara Falls twice before we landed in Toronto. How about that?
That's incredible. It also ages you significantly, but that's okay.
Still younger than you, bud, so it's absolutely fine.
Hush. So, Pete, given your experience in e-commerce, I'd really love to deep dive into SEO specifically. And I guess the first big question for any e-commerce store or owner or web developer, what crucial on-page SEO elements should we be focusing on to kind of boost those search engine rankings?
One of the key things with e-commerce, particularly SEO for e-commerce, is that you naturally have a lot of almost duplicated pages. You've got a lot of pages that follow the same template, the same layout, the same structure. Okay, the words and images may be different, they may sit in different categories, but essentially, in order to make sure that you don't get penalized for cannibalization is one of the biggest issues for SEO for e-commerce websites. In order to make sure that you're avoiding that, you really have to be dotting your I's and crossing your T's. So firstly, make sure your schema's set up correctly. Make sure your page structure's correctly. Make sure you're doing all the basics right, like you haven't got multiple H1 tags on pages, and it really, you do need to get down into that nitty gritty kind of stuff and just get the basics like nailed. Because if you don't, you could have a problem that isn't, if you've got a lead gen site and you get some of the basics wrong, it might only replicate 20 or 30 times. It doesn't really matter. Please don't shoot me for saying that, anybody that's optimizing lead gen sites. But the difference in scale with an e-com site where you might have 100,000 URLs, you've got one hell of a bigger problem on your hands if you don't get those basics right from the outset.
That's true. I mean, just thinking of my own website. So if I was to structure that, everything is in a post, everything's added via custom fields, especially say if you're using WooCommerce, etc. So you're replicating that product problem multiple times per product page. So get the overall template right, and that's obviously going to carry out into the product itself. I guess as well, there's an area of educating your internal team as well, because if you have internal team members jumping into WordPress, maybe accessing a page builder or accessing the WordPress editor, we probably need to be teaching people to not go crazy on using H1, H2 tags within the product description as well. I'm not sure what people get up to, but I'm assuming there are a few rules that we should be applying. What other elements kind of on page should we be looking at? I mean, is images a problem? Large images? What else?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing we're going to be talking about mobile coming up, but obviously since Google's changed to its algorithm in 20 2020, I think, when it changed to mobile first indexing. That is now the approach you need to take. So the Google PageSpeed Insights score needs to be very high on your list of optimization when you're looking at things. Looking at your first contentful paint, largest contentful paint. I won't go through them all, but they're the things that you do need to be that need to be very high in your mind as well. Particularly, as I say, when you come to the product pages and the category pages. We can talk a bit about how we use category pages in a minute if you like, but they're the things that are going to naturally add load to your user's device. Category pages will have lots of images on. Product pages will probably have lots of images on, and chances are you'll be able to zoom into them, so you're going to need some high res versions of them somewhere. So the techniques that you can use for lazy loading, compression, all of that, you need to be on it. And this has to be one of the sort of bugbears I have a little bit when I don't want to discredit anybody with what I'm about to say, but actually, in order to build sites that are this big, they are technical jobs. Having an understanding of how code works, how servers work, how assets get served is kind of crucial in order to make these sites a success. That's not to say that, if you can't do that and the next door neighbor runs a shop down the street and they want to be able to sell a few products online, you can't help them. As I say, I'm not trying to discredit anybody, but the bigger these sites become, the more you need to be on it. And if you're already at the limits of your skill set, live e-com sites certainly aren't a playground that you want to be learning on. Just going back to the point you just made earlier about custom fields and that kind of thing. Ironically, the best still, in my mind, the best way still to build an e-commerce site in WordPress is to scrap the page builder altogether. Lock the client out of it if you're using one. Yep. They do not need to be in there. If you'll be able to remember, Lee, when you used to have to build a website in WordPress, you kind of had to break it because it was really a blogging platform. So you had to sort of add in the CPT for pages, and then you had to force one to be the front page and all that kind of stuff. And actually, then you used to be able to the custom fields. There's no ACF plugin, so you had to code the fields in the functions file. That way of building sites was by far a better SEO way of building sites, because as the developer, you knew that once you delivered it to the client, they couldn't get anywhere else. They couldn't get anywhere to break anything because it was all done in code. And whilst I understand the rise of page builders and how it makes things more accessible and it's faster and it's more efficient and you can give more freedom and you can now code modules, and I'm not against any of that. But if you're talking purely e-commerce, the more you can rely on a code base to deliver it, the better the result is going to be to the client, as long as the code base is right, of course. But you're going to get that reliability in your result a lot better.
I interrupt this program, folks, just to remind you that Conversio do have an excellent free service where you can have a discussion with one of our experts with regards to your e-commerce website, especially just hooking into that point, Pete, that you made there about ensuring that you have the expertise, you have experts involved with regards to the code base and also just the overall platform. So I just thought I would stick that in because that felt like an utterly awesome way of just reminding people you are on the Conversio channel. I mean, come on, you must have expected this was going to happen. So just in short, just to kind of reiterate, on-page stuff is going to be get the basics right, the flow of the HTML and your schema as well, get that nailed. And then for everything else, it's site speed, which is very much around your development practices, how well you build the website itself, and of course the architecture that you're using, your hosts, etc. Now, showing up is kind of like half the battle in search results. That's great. But how can we optimize titles and descriptions to actually get people to click?
This is a bit of $1 million question, and this is where you start verging on themes that are slightly outside SEO and slightly more into themes that are just good marketing. So, of course, understanding your customer has to be the top of that list. Knowing what the language is that they are going to use, the things that are going to make them tick, versus just chucking stuff in there because because you feel like it. If you
So don't do what they do on the Amazon listings for a start off, I'm assuming.
No, absolutely.
You just want to buy a toothbrush, and it'll be like plastic toothbrushes, and all sorts of other kind of keywords thrown in just to the title itself.
Stick with perpendicular pig hair. Absolutely. It's don't do that at all. It needs to feel natural. If you view your meta title and meta description as your opportunity to encourage your customer to click onto your page, whatever that may be, that is a better way of approaching it. Now, of course, with the advent of tools like ChatGPT, AI tools, writing these things doesn't need to be hard, doesn't need to be onerous. And the way you can structure prompts to put things into ChatGPT does mean that you can start to get into the head of your customer a little bit from an automated fashion. And you can, of course, also name keywords and whatever that you want to put in there. The one thing I would say is that I was talking to, it was a mutual friend of ours, a guy called Bob Gentle. And we love Bob. He's great. He's the nicest Scottish person you'll ever meet, and
the most calming voice ever.
He is, absolutely. Anyway, he had this great analogy, and I'm fully accrediting it to him. I'm taking no credit for this whatsoever, but of applying the 80-20 rule to anything that you put into ChatGPT, or particularly anything you get out of ChatGPT. And that 20% is you. So that 20% has to happen after you've generated whatever the heck it is you're generating. So you take the output and then Leify it, or Steveify it, or Johnify it, or Karenify it. I need a girl's name in here somewhere. But make it, you can use tools like that to take some of the pain out of it, but please just don't copy and paste the result of ChatGPT out into your website. It isn't going to help with ranking. I think even at this early stage, we can already tell that pure copy and paste out of the AI tools doesn't rank as well as something that is organically written. That doesn't mean to say you can't use those tools to get you out the gate, absolutely. But do make sure that you are humanifying it before anything goes live on the internet.
So I think what you're saying here is that we can create titles and descriptions that will be ideal for our target audience, and it doesn't have to be complicated anymore. We've got tools like ChatGPT, so we can, with prompts, say to ChatGPT, I have this widget, the target audience is X, Y, and Z, so we're feeding ChatGPT all of this information. We can then ask for a compelling meta title and description that might encourage them to click through. It will then provide me a few options, one of which I can pick, and then I should leify or brandify. So whatever my brand voice is, whatever my target audience is expecting to hear, kind of add that humanity into that, and add that to the meta description.
That's exactly it. Exactly it.
So I've understood. Just kind of tweeting it back to you, as it were, just to make sure that that I understand what I'm doing. And folks, we also have a little video which you can check out in the description down below, where I actually went through a whole load of e-commerce prompts, very similar to what Pete was saying. So go ahead and check that out. There's some good prompts in there that you can swipe and use for your e-commerce website. That's quite handy you mentioned that, mate. That's a good little plug. That's the second plug. I wonder how many plugs I can get in.
I was going to say, and all of this is like Lee and Pete unscripted. He honestly hasn't sent me any of the list of any plugs he wants to get in here.
Nothing. So this is perfect. So this is great. Now, we've talked about ChatGPT in creating titles and descriptions, etc. Mm-hmm. What should we consider? Because there are kind of two camps here, aren't there? There is the search engine, who also needs to get something out of this, I assume, out of this title, description, and meta, along with the human. Or is that now wrong? Do search engines look at the overall page and ignore what you write as your title and your description? Or do you have to cater for both? And if you have to cater for both, how?
Right. So
loaded question.
Loaded question. Right. Let's stand back from this a little bit at the minute. Okay. Right. Just let's take the pressure off from under this pressure cooker. Turn the heat down from under this pressure cooker. That's the quote from Friends.
Excellent.
Right. So before I sort of get into that specifically, think about what is Google trying to do. Google is a business, and the way they make money one of the ways they make money, but the way they make money out of search is through the paid ads. The way that they can charge a premium for those ads is to display the best results on the internet in the 10 free spaces beneath where the ads are. Now, we used to call that page one, but now you kind of have this super scroll place where you get like, but it's normally a map pack plus 10 or a some kind of featured snippet plus 10, then a few more ads, then another 10. So it still kind of works in pages. So what Google is ultimately trying to do really is make money. And the way it does that is by making sure, as I say, that those top results are the best they can possibly be, so that they essentially manufacture a bidding war for the spaces to appear above them. So by bringing this into your own website, if you're then thinking about how to structure the SEO on within your website, be that content, be that meta information, be that schema, be that technical delivery, be that internal linking, whatever it is, what you are really aiming for is to be the best at X on the internet, and that's what earns you your place within that top 10. If you then apply that to the next level, so right, that's site-wide. Okay, we're now going to make the best website about dog shoes that we can.
Okay. I feel like you just Googled dog shoes recently.
If you're watching this and it's been
edited out... We are having a heat wave, aren't we? So I presume that's why you were Googling dog shoes. Sorry, carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt your flow.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So if you were... we're trying to make this entirely fantastic entire website about that. Well, a fantastic website is made up of fantastic pages that then contain fantastic content that then spoon feed Google information about how fantastic they are, that then structured in the right way so that when Google gets there, it isn't struggling to understand what a page is about. It sits there a bit like a Frenchman in a cafe and goes, "Oh, mais oui, this is the I'm not going to stop the French accent, but this is...
we apologise on behalf of our French watchers.
Yeah, no offence, and no French people were hurt in the making of this video. But what I'm trying to say is you need to present yourself over a period of time as the pinnacle to do with a particular subject matter area. And within that, you then have silos, you then have content, you have pages, you have whatever you want to call them, that proves that and builds that authority in this area. And that then comes down to page levels. So what you're simply trying to do with all of this is make yourself the best that you can be, the best source on the internet. Now, part of the way you can do that is habitual, is by making sure that, like we've been talking about, all your schema is correct, by making sure that your page layouts are correct, that the dev's correct, that you've got the right tags in the right places, that your images are crunched, all of that kind of stuff. And once you get those things going, they're kind of a set and forget type thing, as long as the right processes are followed, and that's where SOPs come in, etc., etc. The then maybe a bit more creative bit about this is then to understand, if we're going to prove ourselves to Google as the top authority on dog shoes and the well-being of dogs because of the shoes that they wear, then we need to then explore, okay, so how does Google understand what dog shoes is? What are the people that are already on page one? What are they ranking for? How are they structuring their stuff? What's the competition like that we need to beat? And that kind of leads to the real point I'm making here, which is, whilst there's a whole load of things that you can do to get things right, in inverted commas, what you really need to do is beat the competition. And there are tools out there that will help you assess how much effort, how much content, how many pieces of content, how long does it need to be? What keywords does it need? How many internal links can it use? Where does this sit in a hierarchy of content? You can get all of that information and then plan that into your website. And that works for lead gen or e-commerce the same. E-commerce kind of has the edge with this though, because it has this background of a product base. And that just gives you so much more opportunity for linking, for targeting particular keywords. We can have a debate another day about whether Google still works on a keyword basis or not. Spoiler, yeah, yes, it does, but it may be not as important as it used to be, but it still does. And yeah, you just have infinite more possibilities to do with it. And I think part of that comes down to the mindset of store owners over lead generators. Store owners, people that have a product to sell, they get the concept of you need to market something, or you can market something in multiple ways in order to sell the same product, because their businesses are based on one in, one out, one in, one, or 100 in, 100 out, 1,000 in, 1,000 out. Whereas people who are dealing with lead generation often things are a lot more bespoke. They have a lot more options. They're not quite as productized. That's exactly what productized service is, I suppose. That's all I'm really trying to describe here. So yeah, that's really where the benefit lies. But how you come into all of that is to understand that big picture of what Google is trying to achieve. Sorry, I've rambled there for like 5 minutes.
All right, but let me try and kind of regurgitate some of that back at you. So duck if it hits you. But I think what you're saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're saying is that we may be putting too much concern on the meta title and description that shows up being the point that Google or search engines also look at. I think what you're saying is that that's the humanity side of things. That's what people will see. But what gets you the actual position, the top 10 position, is actually a better site overall. So a site that has already adhered to all of those best practices across the board with regards to the basics, your HTML, your schema, your speed, all of that good stuff. But also then the quality of the content throughout the site, as well as the specific page that is being referenced as well. So good quality that resonates with the target audience, and to ensure that you've been delivered the best possible website. Part of that is not only knowing your target audience and being the expert in creating epic content, but is also using some of those third-party tools that will help you analyze what your competitors are doing in the space. People who already appear in the top 10, what are they doing? What are they talking about? How are they structuring things, etc., so that you can emulate and improve in order to, hopefully move up the ranks. So I think that's what you're saying in a nutshell.
Yeah, essentially, you're getting it there. And this is one of the reasons why including cost per click data whenever you're doing any form of organic keyword research is so important. Because if you can see two terms and you can see that someone's paying $1 per click on one term and $25 per click on another term, the reason that term draws such a high cost per click is because there's a far higher chance people are converting off it. That's the one that people are getting the sales from. So
what you're saying here is I don't even need to be paying for this. This is just a case of going ahead and using the keyword tools is it still called AdWords? I don't know what it's called nowadays.
Google Ads.
Google Ads, okay, Google Ads. And you can use that data in order to help you understand how to weight the pages.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. And the approach that we take, the approach that I was sort of developed into, I suppose, over my career, was very much to follow what the data is telling you. There are theoretically 512 parts to the Google algorithm, and they won't tell you what they all are. There's probably more than that now. They won't tell you what they all are. So the amount of decisions that you have to make in order to try and navigate this thing is, it can be overwhelming. Whereas actually by looking at the data, all of the data that you can find will hold some meaning to it. That doesn't mean that you need to get so much that you become data blind, but actually using things like cost per click data in organic research it's just a smart thing to do. The data is readily available. It's just another column on the table. So just damn well use it.
That's incredible. And I love that phrase, data blind. Could you share with us any tools that will help us analyze our website and competitors' websites that will not overwhelm? Because I think that is part of the problem, especially if you've got an e-commerce website, you've got 10,000 products, you've got millions of visitors, etc. You've already got a lot of data. You're obviously in a competitive space, etc. What tools would you recommend people use to try and kind of simplify that and not become data blind because there's just too much in front of you?
So if you want to put your hand in your pocket and pay for it, Semrush is still the best tool on the market, and they're constantly developing it and adding new things to it. It's fantastic. I'm very much in that kind of camp. That's very much ingrained in my process. But it's expensive. You don't need to pay that much money for it. If you want a lower cost option, Mangles do a great, reliable product. So to give you the sort of economy of scale, I think Semrush starts about $130 a month up to thousands, depending on how much you want to, what you need. Whereas Mangles, I think, is about between 40 and 50. I have a feeling it might have gone up to 49 actually. But yeah, around that kind of price bracket. So a downside cheaper, and it will give you just as reliable, just as good information, and you can target your competitors. It can also suggest to you the competitors that actually come back, because just while if you're bricks and mortar business doing, and you class your competition as the similar company in the next town or the next county or the next state, actually when it comes to the SERPs, your competition's the people that are in the top 10. So it will start to identify sites that are similar to you that you may not have thought of as well, to sort of broaden what so it's a broaden. That's a broaden and widen put together. To widen your scope a little bit as to who those competitors might be.
I feel like you've invented a new phrase. You could start like a whole SEO strategy around broadening.
I don't know how well that'd go down.
Broaden and bright. Yeah, I like it. Well, thanks for those tools as well. Always good to know that there is a cheaper tool out there, because I've often looked at Semrush and my eyes have watered a little bit. And the data blindness is obviously one of the things that I too struggle with. For example, whenever I've looked at just Google Analytics in general, we get loads of visits, for example, over on my podcast, and I never know what I should be looking at or what kind of metrics I should be taking seriously. So just on that, can you throw a few metrics out there that e-commerce store owners should be looking at minimum, so that they can not overwhelm themselves? If there were, say, I don't know, 5 or whatever, 3, 10, whatever number you come up with, what are the top few metrics that we should be looking at when we're looking at tools like Mangle or I think you said Mangle or Semrush, etc.? What should we be looking at in order not to overwhelm ourselves?
So, look, the first thing that any e-commerce owner should be considering with all of this, and this doesn't really come from a tool, but is your sales. What are the sales that you need to make? Where does your profit sit within the products that you sell? If one product's going to make you $100 more profit than another product, then really you want to be pushing those things. So you do need to understand from a specific business level where you need to be looking at. But the things that I would be, when it comes to the tool level, the things that, particularly from an e-commerce side of things, we're looking at, they are competitors, they are the structure of competitors' sites, they are the number of backlinks and the sources of backlinks that they're getting, how their internal linking works, how their categorization works, and going back to keywords, the keywords that they are targeting, and with those keywords, the cost per click metrics, so that we get an idea of which keywords convert better than others. So they're kind of what I mentioned, I think about 6, I was counting them up, that we would dive into the tools to find, but would then look at it through the lens of the target business, the client's business itself. Mm-hmm. Talking about categories, just a second. I did mention that.
Good. I was going to mention that. You said early on, you kind of teased us with categories, and I was like, oh, when are we getting to the meat?
So the thing with categories give you a brilliant opportunity to rank content for particular keywords, and they almost instantly give you kind of like if you think of your website a bit like a family tree, with an e-commerce site, you can spool up a new relative within that family tree and link a whole load of products into it. They obviously have to be relevant to it, but link a whole load of products into it really easily. And it's like, as I say, turning on this element of the family tree. You can do it in a few hours. It's absolutely fantastic. So if you think about the example I normally give for this, if you're Nike and you're trying to sell trainers, a standard shoe shop, I won't go for dog shoes this time, but a standard shoe shop category structure will have training shoes, it will have maybe squash shoes, football boots, etc., etc. That's the kind of category. I know, Lee, you enjoy a good stiletto, so that they're your kind of standard categories. That's what everybody else is going to do. But what about adding categories in for things like pink shoes, or Mother's Day shoes, or Father's Day shoes for that matter, or Christmas shoes, or whatever it might be, tartan shoes. You can very easily, if you find that there's a keyword there, you can very easily spool up a page. You need to make sure that page has some content on it, and you can use some of the tools that we've been talking about already, things like ChatGPT, Semrush to find your keywords, etc., etc. You need to have some content on there. But you can very easily spool up this page, go and assign all of the tartan shoes in your collection to it, and hey presto, you've got this category that is a page that will rank, and it's got authority behind it, in inverted commas, because it's got this background of product that can also be categorized in this new category. These kind of pseudo categories, if you like, is one of the main ways we work with our e-commerce clients in order to develop their websites, but it's far easier to do that. It's far more meaningful. Thinking about what Google's trying to achieve, if you're trying to sell a product, you can't hide it from Google that you're trying to sell a product. Google understands what your website's about. So actually using a category page, the only way to get to it is maybe through some internal links in other parts of your website. Probably won't be in your navigation structure or anything like that, but the page is there as a ranking page, as an entry page on a specific term. And as I say, from an SEO point of view, they're like gold, because you can spool them up really quickly. You can that they're going to rank. They do a lot of the hard work for you, and actually it can put product directly into the insight of the customers that are searching for, in this case, tartan shoes. So they're never underestimate the power of a category page in an e-commerce website. As long as it's structured correctly, as long as it's got placeholders that you can put plenty of copy in. My tips for that are to have a short intro section above the product, then have you put product block with however many products you want on it, paginated, load more, you name it. You can structure that how you want, and then have an extended the possibility of an extended content block underneath the product, because then if you do have to run on for 1,000 words, then you've got the space to do it without affecting your UX too much.
So going on shoes, then we could create a category for running, or we could kind of create a higher level category for athletic shoes, which could kind of is a broader reach, because it could cover running and X and Y and Z. It could cover a whole load. Again, it could also be Christmas presents, depending on what you're offering. So it could be Christmas gifts. So you have gifts that are all year round, but some of them could also be considered as Christmas gifts. So we could put those under a category as well, because you can have one product, multiple categories, but it'll also appear on that page. So as many ways as you can approach it. I guess you don't want to overdo the idea as well.
That all depends on the keyword research and the level of site that you're in. I could say, no, you don't want to do more than 100 of these, but if you're up against a competition with 10,000 categories, you can easily have 1,000, 1,500 of them. Wow. If you're up against competition that's only got 50 categories, then you produce 100. Yeah, that's going to look a bit spammy and a bit like overkill. So it's all kind of contextual. You have to understand how your competition's.
But also the categories have to be meaningful. You can't just, create categories for the heck of it. It's an idea of who is your target audience? What are they searching for? What categories are they searching within, or are they interested in, etc. And then make sure that those categories reflect that, rather than just trying to spin up new ideas for the sake of creating a new page.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If I didn't make that clear right at the start, this is all based in your research right at the top. So these are all things that are relevant to your customer look, my dad always had this expression that there's always more than one way to skin a cat. That's what you're trying to do with your keyword research, is you understand what the core terms are, the core things that build up your authority, but then in order to contribute to that, in order to prove that authority, you need to think about this surrounding content. We used to call it pillars and clusters, and this is exactly cluster content that we're talking about. It's all of the lower value in terms of search volume, the lower hanging fruit, if you like, that proves that this tree is about whatever the tree is going to be about.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful analogy. Apart from the skinning a cat, that just sounds utterly awful. I have no idea where that term comes from, but I use it all the time as well. Well, that's phenomenal. I guess as we come into a close, then, buddy, because I guess there are so many different directions that we could go in, and you've already thrown tons of value at us. Are there any other lesser known or overlooked SEO strategies that you feel would yield some quick results for our e-commerce store owners?
Well, I mean, you've said the Achilles heel with this one, SEO and quick, in that sentence, haven't you?
Yeah, I know. I was hoping that, in somewhere you'll have something up your sleeve.
Look, SEO. There's this misnomer that SEO has to start showing results in 6 months. That's not true at all. We can show SEO results to clients within weeks if we need to. They're not going to be mega results, and it's all like I've said previously. It's all dependent on your competition. Sure. The thing that people find most difficult with all of this stuff, and that's where they turn to agencies really for help, is firstly in the technical knowledge, but secondly in the consistency. Yeah. And really it is about applying these things consistently. We're now coming full circle to where we started, where we talked about how the code base needed to be clean, where your products, if you got something wrong on a product page, it could be wrong 100,000 times, all that kind of stuff. If you don't apply these things consistently, you don't apply these strategies consistently, you're not creating new content. Actually, maybe that's where this podcast should end, or this episode should end. One of the things that a lot of site owners, e-commerce, non-e-commerce, struggle with is, I used to be ranking in page. If I had £1 for every time, I used to be ranking in page 1 for this, and now I'm on page 3 or 5 or whatever, insert number that's greater than 2. Why? I haven't done anything. Yeah, that's it. You've not done anything. So, in order for Google to show to demonstrate the best results on the internet, it uses 2 metrics: trust and authority. They're in broad brushstrokes. That's how the Google algorithm breaks down. And in order to, one of the ways that it assesses this is how active your website is and how up to date your content will be. And actually, when I see these websites that have dropped from page 1 to page 4, 5, 6, 7, wherever they are now, it's not that they have, the thing they have done wrong is nothing. That's the issue. And what's really happened is they've just been displaced by content that Google deems as more trustworthy or more authoritative, largely because it's more up to date. Yeah. And it's going to be more applicable to the user right now. Hence, they can charge more for the ad that's going to appear above it. This is how this whole picture starts to knit together. So use your website. A website is never finished. It's born or birthed or whatever the analogy you want to use for it. It's never actually finished, and you need to put it to work. You do that by creating content, by changing your categories, by refreshing pages that have been there for a little while, by improving your site hierarchy, by changing that code base, by fixing things, by looking at your UX and making sure that the customer can easily get to a purchase decision and pass through your checkout and all that kind of thing if they need to. You do that consistently and use the damn thing, because otherwise, as I say, you'll be displaced rather than anything else. And if you want to know where to start, that is
pretty much a lesser known strategy, though, isn't it? You are right. People don't do that. They build their site, people start to come, and then they sit back. The lesser known strategy is keep working at it, keep creating those pages, those posts, those categories, update those existing products, and fix anything that's broken.
And if you want to know where to start, our good friends, Martin and Lindsay Huntbatch, or Martin Huntbatch and Lindsay Cambridge, I should say, they recommend They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. It is a fantastic book. It gets you, it won't answer your questions in terms of what to do for your business, but it will give you the structure of how to think about things in order to sort of overcome that block. And you can ask ChatGPT for ideas, because you're then going to take those ideas and not copy and paste what ChatGPT's put output for you. There you go.
Pete, Thank you so much for spending some time with us and opening our eyes on all things e-commerce and SEO. You're a freaking legend. What is the best way for people to connect with you, mate? And then we shall say goodbye.
So the best place that people can get hold of me is through my own website, which is petereverett.com. And I have a podcast on there, or you can visit us at the seohive.co website.
Pete, thank you so much. Take care and cheerio.
Cheers, Lee.